Today on episode number 498, we have a really cool Because of My Podcast story. We're going to take some time to learn from Dave's mistakes. That's not the least bit embarrassing. And we're going to talk about unleashing your inner hero. Hit it, ladies.
The School of Podcasting with Dave Jackson.
Podcasting since 2005. I'm your very own personal podcast coach, Dave Jackson. Thanking you so much for tuning in. If you're new to the show, look, we talk about all things podcasting, and I'm going to help you massage your message. I'm going to help you tackle that technology. I'm going to help you face your fears and flatten that learning curve and get you on the road to pain-free podcasting. Our website is schoolofpodcasting.com. Use the coupon code LISTENER, that is LISTENER, and you'll save on your registration fee at the School of Podcasting. Also, should probably mention, as I record this, it is at the end of January. It's January 24th. You'll be listening to this tomorrow, and on the 31st of January, the School of Podcasting will be closed to new applicants, and we'll be opening sometime when I'm ready. I'm going to do a complete overhaul. We are going through a, what would it be? It's when you close for remodeling, I guess you could say. So if you want to get in at the current price, you need to do it before January 31st. Well, today, one of the things I always love to do is I have a couple questions that I like to ask, and just leave them open. They're on the table anytime you want. And the first one is, because of my podcast blank, whatever that might be. And the other one I ask is, what were the last 5 podcasts you listened to? And tell us a little bit about them, maybe where we can find them. And of course, tell us about your podcast if you have one. And so Darren Dake is a really cool guy. He's a member of the School of Podcasting. In fact, you might remember a year ago, Darren called in with a Because of My Podcast story. Well, guess what? But wait, there's more. Check it out. Wait till you hear this. This is cool.
Hello, Dave Jackson.
Hello, Darren.
Darren Dake with the Coroner Talk podcast. Of course, that can be found at coronertalk.com. And yes, as you might imagine, it's a Coroner Talk podcast, we are talking about coroner subjects.
I see dead people.
It is the only podcast in iTunes dedicated to the men and women working in the field of death investigation. You can probably tell that I say that a lot. Anyway, I want to thank you very much for what you do for the podcast community. All that you've done for me, the shows that you put out is instrumental to me to make my show a success.
Well, thank you, Darren. Hey, if you know anything about me, I love to talk podcasting. You want to talk podcasting? I am your guy. So thank you so much for being a listener, buddy.
But today I wanted to give you a Because of My Podcast story. Sometime about a year ago, maybe not quite a year ago, I gave you a Because of My Podcast story where I was asked to help with director of training for a state agency in Missouri for deputy sheriff training in investigative, detective, criminal investigation, that type of stuff. And that was largely because of my podcast. Well, the podcast has continued, and I have made contacts all over the world. Currently, we are in 114 countries, and we, in December 2015, celebrate...
Wait, listen to this. You ready for this? Just get ready. This is a guy who's talking about investigating crime scenes. Okay, you ready for this? Check this out.
Going over 100,000 downloads.
He went over 100,000 downloads. That's amazing to me because he's talking about investigating dead sites, dead, whatever you want to call them, right? Crime scenes. And not everybody's into that, but he's got 100,000 downloads. That's a lot. And, I always think in groups of 20. So let's do that. Let's do a little math with Dave here. 100,000. What is it? 5,000, right? Divide that by 20. Yeah, 5,000 classrooms of people, more or less. I mean, there are a lot of ways you can slice that number, but 100, Darren, congratulations on that, my friend. That is really, really cool.
Now, to me, that's a huge podcast.
It's a huge podcast to me, buddy.
Somebody else, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But let me tell you what else the podcast has done. The podcast is actually a big calling card. I'm an investigator in the state of Missouri, and I teach locally in the state of Missouri, and so I'm really not known outside some small circles in the state of Missouri. But because of the podcast, because of the contacts that I've made, not only was I asked to be a director of training for a state agency, now I have come on to a federal agency.
Booyah! That's right. He's going national, baby. How cool is that?
To teaches nationwide, and I will be their lead national instructor.
Lead, baby. He's playing lead.
For the Certified Criminal Investigator course. And I'm, of course, going to help develop that and teach that week-long program, along with many other contacts that I've made. I've been asked to speak at coroner conferences, seminars, both for locally and for lawyer conventions, things like this, prosecuting attorneys, defense attorneys, all of that because of the podcast. Because I've made contact with people who's heard the show, and then they said, oh, yeah, I've heard about you, and someone else listens to your show, or someone in their office says, hey, you need to listen to this show. This is about death investigation, things like that. And so because of that, my name and the show's name is preceding me. So when I make contact with people or they're looking for somebody to be in their conference, there's always somebody to say, hey, have you thought about this guy? All of that would have not happened had it not been for having a podcast. Now, I still know the same things. I still do the same things. But now I'm known on a national level. Now, the next goal is to be known, although I'm known internationally because we're in 114 countries, my next goal is to actually be asked to speak somewhere outside of America. And that'll be my next because of my podcast. So, Dave, again, thank you very much for what you do. Thank you for all that you've done for me and the podcast community. Keep up the good work. You're a blessing, my friend. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
114 countries. Think about that again. Just think about that. That he can go to 114 countries, and there's someone in that country who has listened to his podcast. That's kind of mind-boggling, isn't it? That here it is, it's you in the basement, wherever you're at, and there's somebody on the other side of the planet listening to your show. That's Darren, that's so cool, buddy. And I'm looking forward because I don't think it's a matter of if someone will ask you to talk outside the country. I think it's just a matter of when, and I will look forward to hearing that because of my podcast story. So congrats and keep up with the great work. And if you check your watch, I think you'll see.
In case you missed it, it's time for a podcast rewind.
Podcasters Roundtable, round 64, the podcast that pays ... for itself. This word, money and hobby, throws off everybody, man. I'm telling you, this is what caused craziness in the forums. It's like,
so I could go to the Logical Weight Loss podcast and I could say, hey, go buy a Fitbit. I love my Fitbit, blah, blah, blah. logicalloss.com/Fitbit. I would make $10. And some people have no problem doing that. How about we just cut out the middleman and let's save you some money? So you don't have to spend $100. How about you just give me 10? Because that's what I'm going to get out of that $100. So that's another way of looking at it. You're saving your audience money and you're cutting out the middleman. That's an easy way to think about it. It's like, look, instead of pimping a product that you have to just go spend $30, $40 on so I can make 2, how about you just send me 2 and I'll save you $38?
That's a good way of looking at it.
You can find the rest of that at Podcasters Roundtable. Really interesting discussion because in some cases there are people that are making money with their podcast because they're delivering value. And it's kind of messing it up for those people who are doing this strictly for the fun. Like my podcast isn't as valuable because, well, I'm not making $1,000 a month, or I'm not doing 1,000 downloads per episode. And that is just hogwash, my friends. In fact, over in a Facebook group, they asked, what is your idea or definition of a successful podcast? The one that has specific number of downloads or a specific number of subscriptions or sponsorships or something else that I might not know. And it seemed like all the responses focused on money and downloads. And look, I like money just as much and what it can do for me. I'm up to my eyeballs in student loans, but I see people obsess, and I mean obsess over download numbers, and they obsess over new and noteworthy. I just threw up in my mouth just a little bit. And you're focusing on the wrong things. Look, when you're in new and noteworthy, it's great. Look at it as a reward, not a destination. That is from my buddy Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity to Podcast. It's a great quote. But you need to focus on your audience and impacting them in a positive fashion. And my favorite response came from Lou. Now, if I say Lou, you should know who I mean. If you don't know Lou Mangello, this is a guy. Listen to this story. He's a lawyer in New Jersey. He has a cushy IT job, and he decides to quit the job, move to Florida where he can be closer to Disney because he just loves Disney, and start a podcast. And he's doing that now full time. Lou Mangello, WDWradio.com. And he said this, asking like, how do you define success? And Lou says, does it make you happy? Do you love doing it every day? Do you love doing it every week? Whatever your schedule is, do you have a positive impact? I love that phrase, positive impact on the lives of others. Is it something you'd love to do every day or as your career? If you can say yes to those, any of them, you're successful. It's not about dollars and cents or downloads. It's about levels of happiness. And all I can say to that is Lou's such a great guy. If you get a chance to meet Lou or see him speak, definitely check him out. Amen to that, my friend. That is why Lou Mangello is the man. And again, look, I like money. I like what it can do for me. But I also know the impact that podcasting has had on my life. And I've had times where I've had different situations come up in my life, and it wasn't my family that came to my rescue. It was the audience that came and said, hey, I just want to make sure you're okay. And so there are many other ways of benefiting from podcasting besides, and it doesn't, if you help somebody, you impact their life, is that enough? Check this out. I want to share a story with you here. Mark Dowding does a podcast with his son, and you can find that at ohbeep.com. It's the OBeep Geocaching show. And he got an email from a listener. And, there are times when we're doing episodes and we're out there going, hey, hello? Is this thing on? Is anyone, hello? Is there anyone present? Are you listening? No, hello. So he got a listener email that said, I just wanted to tell you how much I enjoy the show. I listen on the way to work and on my way home from work. My drive is around 1.5 hours. I have never laughed so much listening to a podcast. I sometimes have tears in my eyes from laughing so hard. An awesome father and son podcast. So thank you. So think about this. You have 90 minutes back and forth to work. If that's 45 minutes or 90 minutes one way, it's a lot of time that you're bored, that you might be stressed out because of the traffic. Maybe if you're on a train or a bus, you have some weird people, whatever. You've taken that time and you are now a light in that person's world. You're a reason to make them laugh, cry, think, or groan. And in Mark's case, they're laughing. And Mark says, that's all I want to do. I just want to entertain people. There are plenty of deep dive podcasts in our nation, plenty of interview podcasts. We wanted to do something different. And this is what I tell people. So many people look at other people that are doing things successful, and they want to do the exact same thing they're doing. Because if it's working for them, it should work for me. that is not the case. Look at music. So many times a band will come out and they'll have huge success, and another band will come out that tries to look like them and sound like them, and it just doesn't work because it comes to the first band naturally. It comes the same thing in podcasting. Copycat podcasting, I think it's a bit of a problem. We have a lot of it. But Mark says we hit the spot. No one before that listener has told us we've done that. So I say this to remind you that if you're listening to a podcast today, be sure to email that person. Hopefully they have an easy to find and use contact page, and just say thanks. It puts so much gas in somebody's tank when somebody just says, hey, you know what? When you do this, hello, is anyone present here? Now, when you say, yeah, I'm here and I'm listening, it makes the world of difference. And it's worth keeping in mind that someone is listening and someone is getting value from your show. So don't give up because people are listening. Now, I have kind of a because of my podcast story. You've heard me mention Glenn the Geek from horseradionetwork.com. Glenn is an awesome guy. Glenn is a guy that's making a living with his podcast. Now, I know I just said podcasting doesn't have to be about dollars, but in some cases, for some people, that's what they're using it for. And that's okay. If you don't want to use your podcast as a business, well, as Ryan K. Parker from Food Craftsman says, nope, that's not what he says. He says, where'd Ryan go?
No one will punch you in the face.
Yes, Ryan says no one will punch you in the face if you want to make money. And if you don't want to make money, guess what?
No one will punch you in the face.
That's right. That's the beauty of podcasting. Thank you, Ryan K. Parker from foodcraftsman.com. So Glenn is using it as a business. Glenn has a sales in lots of things. Sales, improv, generally all-around nice dude. I'm going to be with Glenn. If you go to podfest.us, February 25th, 26th, and 27th, I'll be speaking on the 27th. Also be part of a panel where we're going to kind of pick apart your podcast. We're going to put you on a hot seat. Hot seat! So I'm looking forward to hanging out with Glenn. That's in February in Tampa. If you can get there, get there. But Glenn's a guy that is, sharing his information because here again, he's not doing what everybody else is doing. And so he put a thing in the School of Podcasting's private Facebook club. That's one of the things you get when you sign up at the School of Podcasting. And he says, I need to brag a little bit. And he says, with the help of me, being Dave Jackson, I helped him get the word out about that, hey, you don't have to take $15 per 1,000 downloads because that doesn't work for people with a smaller audience. And he said, I've had 4 podcasters contact me this week. Let's make that 5, by the way, Glenn. But he's had 4 podcasters contact me this week who heard me speak on sponsorship, and they all got their first sponsors this week, ranging with rates from $50 to $1,500 an episode. Wow, that is awesome. And the reason I say 5, my buddy Jim Collison from theaverageguy.tv, he got an app developed for his show, and he got a sponsor to pay for it. So here again, we're creating content. It's impacting people in a positive way. And I'm just here to say that you can do this. You can make a positive impact. Now, I know what you're saying, but Dave, no one would listen to me. And I've really been thinking about, as I'm getting ready to move forward this year, I've had kind of themes in the past. Remember, names, not numbers was one of my themes. And I still believe that. And I know my buddy, Brian over at ProfitCast Universe has said that he had the year of profit the one year. I know my friend Cliff Ravenscraft over at podcastanswerman.com, he's doing one now. It's the year of identity. And so I was thinking well, what is this year for me? And I've been thinking through some things, kind of working on looking at what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are. And I originally was going to say it's going to be the year of discomfort. And then I thought about that, and who wants to be uncomfortable for a year? But let me explain what I mean by that. If you're a regular listener to the show, you remember when I was speaking at PodCamp Pittsburgh, and we did an impromptu lecture, and it just didn't seem, as somebody who helped organize the New Media Expo, it seemed weird to just throw in a session. I was like, you can't do that. And they're like, no, you can. And it was in the rules. You could do it. And I still felt uncomfortable. And I did it. And again, had people positively impacted by my session. But sometimes we get that imposter syndrome. And I've been doing some thinking, and it's amazing because if I asked you a question right now to list maybe one of your favorite childhood memories, for me, I'd have to think about it a little bit. And it's not that my childhood was not happy. I had a perfectly normal childhood. But if you asked me to name some things where they weren't so great, man, right, here's one, here's another one, and the thing with the thing and the three-legged race, and then the time that the thing, and I caught my thing in a zipper, and the what? The who? What? So there are those negative things that just stick with you. And that affects our ability to turn on a microphone in some cases. And I found this clip. This is from Dave Ramsey. You know Dave Ramsey. He's the financial guy, Total Money Makeover. You can get that book for free, by the way, at Audible. And I'll have a link to that out at schoolofpodcasting.com/498. But he has this big, long rant. And I'm going to play a small segment of this. And I'm going to say here, for the record, I don't know that this is legal. Now, because I'm commenting on it, some might say, well, it's fair use. But realize when you say, okay, I'm going to use it as fair use, that still means you can get sued. And if you've ever not been involved in the legal system, it's not a lot of fun. I highly advise doing whatever you can to stay outside of the legal system. It's also expensive to prove that, hey, I was using it in fair use. Keep that in mind. If you're like, well, I'll just use fair use. Okay, that means that you can still get sued. And sometimes that's a little expensive. But here, now this is Dave Ramsey in his car. And I do not recommend, apparently Dave has a GoPro on his dashboard and occasionally just hits record and lets a rant go. So this is Dave ranting in his car. You'll hear the cars in the background and stuff. But it's a really great point, and I want to share this with you. Take it away, Mr. Ramsey.
You are not a victim. You're not a victim of big corporations. You're not a victim of Wall Street. You're not a victim of capitalism. You're not a victim of wealth inequality. You're not a victim of racism. You're not a victim. Now, are all of those things real? And do they sometimes oppress you and me? You bet. I had a big company step on my neck and kick my face in last week. Pissed me off, man. Just broke a contract. I mean, and they just got away with it because they got such power that all I could do is sue this multi-million-dollar company, and I'm not going to waste my millions of dollars doing that. It made me mad. I was oppressed by a big company. But you know what? I'm not a victim. I'm not going to adopt the thing, well, you can't get ahead in America because that one big company kicked Dave Ramsey's face in. No. You get up off your butt. You're the hero of this story. You are not the victim in this story. And when people tell you they're a victim, that you're a victim and they have the solution, that makes them the hero. Do not let a politician, do not let a news anchor become the hero in your story. You are the hero in your story. You are in charge of your destiny. You are the one that gets up off your dadgum couch and decides to live your life. You're the one that gets sick and tired of being sick and tired and decides to get out of debt, decides to change your body by going into an exercise program, decides to read some nonfiction books this year, decides to understand the Bible for the first time in your life, decides to start attending church and becoming that kind of dad that you've always going to be. You're not a victim. You're not a victim of your parents and your upbringing, your dysfunctional family. Honey, we all came from dysfunctional families. Some families put the fun in dysfunctional. You got to decide. You're the hero. You're not the victim. You're in charge of your life. I'm not in charge of your life, but I will show you a way on the money piece, the leadership and business piece, the parenting and the marriage piece. Ramsey Solutions will show you a way where you get to live a better life, where you get to be the hero in the story. But I'm not going to fix your life. And don't come up to me at some book signing and say, Dave Ramsey, you changed my life. Because I don't change anybody's life. I show you how to change your life.
There you go. You know what I love about Dave? Dave said, no, I got kicked in the neck. And I'm doing it. He's up there. And then all of a sudden, he's real serious, Dave. I don't do things. No, you can't do this. I love Dave Ramsey. And again, I'll have links to his stuff, schoolofpodcasting.com/498. But you're not a victim. And so I'm playing that for me as much as I am for you. That we all have something, I think, to share. And with the right training and the right amount of practice, you can create great content. Now, let me explain something here. The Podcasters Roundtable clip I played, we were talking about, does your podcast pay for itself? It doesn't have to, for the record. And again, I think so many people use that as a way to go, oh, I'm a failure. Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I'm going to go eat worms. And that's just not the case. I mean, one of my hobbies, and I'm looking forward to summer this year because my new location, I'm right next to a bike path. I'm very close being drivable to a bike path. And here in Ohio, they used to have this canal where canal boats, back in the day before trains, that's way back in the day, and the mules would walk on this path. Well, they turned that path into a bike path. And I'm really looking forward to working off some pounds on that. But that hobby has cost me about $300 for a bike and some bike tires and tune-ups, bike helmets, gloves, these weird kind of pants with padding in peculiar places. And no one's ever said, hey, Dave, that hobby you have, bike riding, yeah, how much money are you making at that? Now, what if your hobby was lifting weights? Now, can you make money lifting weights? Yeah, seems to work okay for Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, it didn't happen overnight. In fact, it didn't happen in 6 weeks. And probably took a couple of years to even think about it, and took a lifetime to really capitalize on it. And in taking the opportunities that you get, like Darren got those opportunities. He's nailing the opportunities when they come up. Podcasting can open the door. You've got to nail the opportunities. But bottom line is your hobby doesn't have to make money. Again, let's go back to Lou's quote. Does it make you happy? Do you love doing it? Then you're successful. So please don't let other people make you feel bad because, well, yeah, but you're not making any money. You don't have any sponsors. That's my point for today. And next week, we'll be talking with Ravi from Digital Access Pass. So we'll be talking membership sites next week. And it's really interesting because there are some there are a lot of similarities between podcasting and having a successful membership site. In both cases, you have to have value. In both cases, you have to get your product, your audio, your video in front of the right people. And in all cases, you have to market it. So that'll be next week. He has a new book out called Subscribe Me. Again, links in the show notes, schoolofpodcasting.com/498. And I'm about 3/4 of the way through chapter 2. If you're doing a membership site, man, you got to get this book. Go to schoolofpodcasting.com/subscribe me. And that will take you right there.
This podcast is part of the Power of Podcasting Network. Find it at powerofpodcasting.com. Changing the world, one download at a time.
So I want to peel back the curtain a little bit and talk about some mistakes I've made. One is really embarrassing, but I'm going to throw myself under the bus so you can learn from what I have done and realize that everything you do, there's probably a way to improve it a little bit, just a little bit. And so I'm going to start off with the last 2 years, I've done a project, which is my favorite podcast is. And starting in November, I have people submit what their absolute favorite podcast is and why. And the very first year I did it, I turned it into a book. I put it out as a podcast. You can find it on Amazon, by the way. If you type in my favorite podcast is, there are now 2 versions of that book. And the first year, the person that had to get added in later was a guy named Jeff Hollbrook. Really nice guy. Does WV for West Virginia podcast.com. And I felt so bad because somehow his submission for the project got lost. And I felt so bad. So this year, I decided to have a specific way to funnel the information in. And I said, go to schoolofpodcasting.com/favorite. Well, I did that 3 out of 4 times. Yeah. And so Jeff submitted his via email. And I know because I got it. And yeah, you heard me right. This year again, I missed one person. And yeah, it was the exact same person as the first year. Jeff Hollbrook, WVpodcast.com. And I feel horrible about this. To make matters worse, as I now play this, listen to what his favorite podcast is.
Hey, Dave, this is Jeff Hollbrook. My wife Dee and I co-host the WV Podcast, West Virginia's podcast. We are tearing down the negative hillbilly stereotype one episode at a time by telling our own story at WVpodcast.com. My favorite podcast for this year is still the Podcasters Roundtable. They're found at podcastersroundtable.com. Besides the fact that all 3 hosts of my favorite podcasts on podcasting are co-hosting this show,
probably 2 out of 3 at this point.
This year, I was able to realize the dream of being one of the new roundtablers on episode 56. It was a blast and I learned a lot. It was also a real treat to continue to chat in the after show. Ray Ortega of thepodcasterstudio.com, Dave Jackson of schoolofpodcasting.com, and Daniel J. Lewis of theaudacitytopodcast.com are the first podcasts I listened and subscribed to, and they continue to deliver the info I need to keep podcasting. Having them all in one place at the same time simply rocks. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jeff. And I've already had emails with Jeff and expressed my deep apologies for missing him again. And so here's my point on this. I took some steps this second year, wasn't quite as consistent as I should have been. And even this year, I've learned things such as next year, I'm going to say here, and I'm going to have a video showing you how to do this. I'm going to say, here's where you can upload your file, that we don't have to worry about attachments and things like that. Here's how I want you to name the file, because that's always a bit of a struggle because everybody names it like my favorite podcast.mp3. Like, and I'll have everybody submit it the same way. So I won't be fielding different locations. And because the whole point was, I could have sworn I uploaded Jeff's to that folder. Like he was there, but I just missed it. But my point is, and I've said this to people, you can't improve what you don't launch. Now, this doesn't mean you don't do any planning and you just wing it and you throw it out there. Wing it and throw it out there. You're going to have a lot of things that you could have done better. Always take a stab at it. In the School of Podcasting, I have a lot on planning your podcast because I want you to get it as close to target as you can. All right, let's aim for perfect. And if we miss, we'll land on really, really good. But that was one that I was like, well, there you go. And so my point here is when you get something that didn't go the way you wanted it to, maybe you get some negative feedback, and we've talked about that in the past, but something didn't go the way you wanted it. Well, okay, maybe it's the teacher in me, but there aren't mistakes. There are only learning opportunities. And so I've learned some things I'm going to do next year when I do that. And I will quadruple check when I get ready to record that episode. And Jeff Hollbrook will be the first person this year. So again, my apologies to Jeff. Now, the other thing I did is next week, as I said, we're going to have Ravi from Digital Access Pass and the subscribeme.fm show on talking about membership sites. And I was checking out Zencastr. And if you haven't heard about Zencastr, ZENCASTR.com. And right now, as I record this, it's free and it's a pretty cool service. Let me explain how this works. You log in, you create a project, it spits out a link. You go to your email and you send the link to whoever you want on your show. This could be one person, it could be 10 people, it could be a whole lot of people. And when they all show up, here's the key point, you press record. And when you get done, you hit stop. And there's actually a chat in there, which is really cool. So somebody could actually like type notes to you that isn't heard on the recording. People can raise their hand. So if somebody has a point, that you could do that. That way you don't have to worry about video and walking all over people. It's a really cool tool and it's free. Well, I told Ravi, I said, hey, instead of doing Skype, let's do, I'm going to try Zencastr. I've used it once with the Cleveland Podcasters Meetup. Find that at clevelandpodcasters.com. And that worked great. And I want to try it again because it's in beta. Now, because it's in beta, I had a backup plan because it never fails. The more important the interview, the better the interview goes, the greater the chance that the computer will eat your recording. That is assuming that you press record. And yeah, I forgot to press record. Now, I'm going to give you a tip here because I was really like, wow, that is such a newbie mistake. And I was like, why? How did that happen? And I thought about other times when I've forgotten to press record. I've done that a couple of times. I haven't done it in a long time on my show, Ask the Podcast Coach with Jim Cullison. I remember once I did it, I believe with my friend Paul Culligan. And so in almost every case, it was somebody I already knew. And what it is, I think, is that somebody shows up, it's your bud, you're chilling, you're talking, and you know what's going on. You don't have to explain all the usual stuff because maybe they know that it's the thing in the podcast and everybody's nice and comfy. And so all of a sudden you look up at the end of the show and you go to hit stop and the only button available is record. So that is something that, and if you're using a portable recorder like the Roland-R-05, you want to make sure that light is not blinking. So my advice, and this is what I normally do. Now with Zencastr, I think it's smart if you wait till everybody is there. But once everybody is there, hit record. Instead of waiting like, okay, we're going to start the show now. All right, in 3, 2, 1, no, just start the show and edit it out later. That's what I do with the Ask the Podcast Coach show. Once Jim's on and I'm on, we check some levels, I hit record, and I just edit out the gobbledygook that is before the official show start later because I don't forget. So that is something, in my opinion, in my travels, to check on is if you're interviewing somebody you really know, you're good friends with, be very, very careful because you're so casual that you kind of lose your protocol and your little checklist and things like that. So that was another mistake that I made. And another mistake, now this one is not my mistake. It's a mistake that I got to clean up. And that is, I had somebody contact me. They said, hey, Dave, I need your help. My podcast feed is invalid and iTunes has quit updating. And I was like, okay, yeah, here's how we do this. I have a certain fee and things like that. And I logged in and they were using WordPress and they had 19 different things in their WordPress that needed updated. And so I went in, first I sent them a message. I said, is there some reason why you've let this lapse? And they said, no, we heard that in some cases when you update things, it causes conflicts. And I said, well, the bad news is when you don't update things, it causes conflicts. So we went through, they had a backup of their website already, and we updated everything. And lo and behold, the problem went away. And so I always like to remind people that when you're using WordPress, the good news is it's very flexible. You're in complete control. But they have these things called plugins. And plugins are like adding air conditioning or power steering to your car, which is kind of stupid when I think about it, because when was the last time you were in a car that didn't have power steering? How about power windows, things like that? And you can add as many plugins as you want. I do not recommend that. And I would also recommend that anything that you're not using, including themes, get them out of there. Because when those are out of date, and here's the key word, in some cases, they may, keyword, leave you open for security risks, meaning somebody could hack your site. So luckily in this case, the person wasn't hacked. It just, because it wasn't up to speed and up to code with everything, it caused his feed to go bad. And that caused a problem for iTunes. And so I realized I might be talking over your head. An RSS feed is like, if you're a radio, it's your signal. It's the 97.5, the 100.7 that iTunes is tuning into. And iTunes is simply a phone book of podcasts, and it basically tunes into your channel and never turns the radio off. So when you put on a new record, or in this case, a new episode, it hears it. So those are some things that I've done or I've seen this week that had caused some problems. And if you need help with anything, I am available for one-on-one coaching. If you go over to schoolofpodcasting.com/contact, you can see that and contact me. And I've got a schedule online that you can see my availability. I do training on the weekends. I do it on the evenings, all sorts of different times, depending on where you're at, and would love to help you. And if you're more of a self-paced person, you can go over to the schoolofpodcasting.com and sign up. Use the coupon code LISTENER, LISTENER, and save when you sign up. So today, we heard from Darren Dake from coronertalk.com about how his podcast is a calling card that is available 24/7, that is opening doors, and it's helping him be seen as an expert. We talked about the fact that please don't let other people's expectations make you feel bad about your podcast. However you define success, if it's making you happy, if you enjoy doing it, if it's having a positive impact on others, then by all means, that's enough for success. If you're interested in money, that's fine too. Nothing wrong with that. But just realize that there are plenty of people that are just having a good time with their son. Or I know one podcast, it's 4 brothers that get together and talk about Formula One racing because that's what they love. And in the past, they didn't make the time to get together, and now they do because they have a podcast. And they say it's bringing their family closer together. Remember that you are impacting people. When you deliver value, asterisk that, when you deliver value, you can positively impact people's lives. And I remind you, and I urge you, now that this show is over, think of a podcast that you listen to and send them an email that says, hey, I listened to that last episode, just want to say thank. That puts so much gas in people's tanks. It really does. And exclude me if you want. I go tell somebody else. That's great. We learned today through Mark of the OBeep Geocaching show, right? We heard about him. We learned about Glenn the Geek and the fact that him being on my show has impacted people. And so don't be the victim. Don't let you are not defined by your mistakes of the past, and you are not defined by how others view you. It is the year of discomfort. It's time to come out of our comfort zone and try something new. Because think about it. Have you ever grown? Have you ever grown in any way without some sort of learning curve? Right? I mean, I grew when I went to college. To play the guitar, The first 5-6 days of playing the guitar are incredibly painful as you build up your calluses. But once you get them, you're ready to fly. There isn't usually anything that has value, that has anything, right? Riding a bike. Who hasn't wrecked a bike the first time you went to ride it? But once you figured out how to balance, well, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help you balance and to help you avoid that telephone pole on your bike. I'm here to show you how to keep pedaling. And I'm here to show you the best roads of podcasting and the best gear and to help you understand. Now, what's this RSS thing again? So I can save you time. You can go search Google and you'll find articles from 2007 that are so outdated, and they'll have you be buying a Blue Snowball and a Blue Yeti microphone that pick up everything there is. So don't let other people's expectations stop you from starting a podcast, and realize your first podcast may not be your best. And if it isn't, you just stop it. You start another one. Worked for Darren. It's worked for a lot of people. Grammar Girl, Mignon Fogarty, was on Oprah because of her second podcast. So if the first one doesn't work, you'll hear this next week. Feedback is not failure. Feedback is not failure. If somebody goes, it's just not my thing, that's feedback. That gives you a chance to tweak it and pivot and maybe take the show in a better direction. So we'll talk about that next week with Ravi from Digital Access Pass. I hope to see you on the inside of the School of Podcasting. Again, coupon code LISTENER. Everything we talked about, schoolofpodcasting.com/498. And until next week, class is dismissed. Take care and God bless.